Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. So good to be with you on this Sunday afternoon. I'm excited to be the facilitator for today's Ta'aleem on behalf of our resident Imam, Tariq El-Amin, the co-chairs of the Ta'aleem committee, Doctors Aisha El-Amin and Gloria Bashir. My name is Lionel Allen, and I'm excited to be here with you to facilitate what we know is going to be a highly engaging session. I'm going to take a few minutes and introduce today's presenter. Her name is Sister Rasheedah Fitzpatrick. She is a product of the Claire Muhammad School and a veteran educator with over 25 years of experience working with students with various disabilities as a special education teacher. She has been in her current district for 19 years, where she is one of a handful of African-American teachers and what many see as a historically racist community. She's also a wife and a mother of 14-year-old twins and an adult son. She comes to you today excited to share some important insights that she's been blessed with that she hopes will be beneficial to our Muslim community, the community of Masjid al-Taqwa, but the broader community at large. And the title of her presentation, brothers and sisters, is How to Do More Than Just Survive, but to Thrive. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Sister Rasheedah Fitzpatrick. You're muted, my sister.
Sorry. Assalamu alaikum. It is with great pleasure and honor that I come to you all, and it's out of love and recognition of what this community has given me that I want to give something back. So without any further ado, before I get started, I wanted to honor my parents by making a short dua to them. So if you go to the next slide, here we go. Oh Allah, my parents are under your care and protection, so protect them from the trials in the grave and the torment of the fire. Indeed, you are faithful and truthful. Forgive and have mercy upon them. Surely you are the oft-forgiving, most merciful. O Allah, forgive them, have mercy on them, grant them safety, pardon them, welcome them, expand their graves. Wash them with water, with ice, with snow. Wash them from their sins, the way a dirt is removed from a white cloth. Grant them a better abode in the hereafter than their abode in the world. Grant them a better family in the hereafter than their family in the world. Grant them a better spouse in the hereafter than their spouse in the world, and enter them in paradise, and protect them from the tails of the grave and from punishment of the fire. Ameen.
Ameen.
All right. My topic today is going to touch on some sensitivity, some sensitive topic of parenting. And I wanted to make sure that I began my presentation with understanding that I honor and respect my parents for everything that they were able to provide for me and show me and expose me to, particularly this community. So I wanted to start off with a text that my father, it was only one text that he shared with me, other than the Quran, of course, and Imam Wafdi Muhammad teachings and Prophet Muhammad's teachings. But this book, going over this book and reading it again has been of tremendous help. So I wanted to just start off with this as our beginning. It says, surely with every difficulty comes relief. As a man thinketh in his heart, so shall he be. Suffering is always the effect of wrong thought in some direction. It is the indication that the individual is out of harmony with himself, with the law of his being. The sole and the supreme use of suffering is to purify, to burn out all that is useless and impure. Suffering ceases for him who is pure. There could be no object in burning gold after the dross had been removed, and perfectly pure and enlightening beings could not suffer. The purpose of suffering is to teach, strengthen, and purify. Do not whine and pity yourself. Learn and grow from your faults and failures. Search for the hidden justice that rules your life instead of kicking against circumstances. Use them as stair steps to greater heights, as challenges that reveal new power within yourself. Law, not confusion, rules the universe. Justice, not injustice, is its guiding principle. You attract what you are. You get what you give. This is excerpt from James Allen and from the text, As a Man Thinketh. If you could turn the slide, Brother Email. Okay, I wanted to give you all about 2 to 3 minutes to, I'm not sure if you're able to click on the attachment and raise your hand when you've completed it. We're putting it in the chat now. It's a quick survey. If you could raise your hand when you completed it.
Brothers and sisters, I did put the link to the survey in the chat.
It says I need permission.
Oh, we won't worry about it then. I apologize. I'm not savvy enough to change that and this presentation at the same time. So we won't, it was not meant to go through, which is fine. I gotta just pivot. All right, if you go to the next slide. Okay, so the root of our toxic culture, as I see it, through investigating and then just really thinking about, like my father would always tell me, make the connections. I believe the root of the toxic culture that we are dealing with, particularly with our youth and in our community, is basically the Willie Lynch letter, in which he set out by saying, if these methods are used intensely for 1 year, he originally said the slaves, but I want us to understand that he was speaking of African Americans, themselves remain perpetually distrustful. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, so it says, how are we doing the bidding of Mr. Lynch in our community? Well, for one, we take differences, as he said to do, and make them bigger. We make differences amongst the sexes, our ages, our socioeconomic background, and our education. Fear is often used, distrust and envy for control purposes. We have the private school students versus the public school students. Like, we're afraid of the public school kids or the city kids. I know the suburbs are always saying they're city kids, and which makes them automatically seen as a threat. City versus suburban. Commercialism, where we're wearing our paychecks on our back because we're trying to get the envy of others to see just how great we're doing. So if you go to the next slide. The media messages, courtesy of Mr. Lynch, where he specifically said to pit the old Black man against the young Black man. We see that with sports all the time, football, basketball, it's always who is the greatest. And then we also have it amongst young Black females versus old Black females in the music industry and as well as in the film industry. We have dark-skinned slaves or dark-skinned African Americans versus light-skinned African Americans. And we see this constantly in television and film and any social outlet. And lastly, we see females versus males and vice versa in the workplace. Those are just a few examples. Distrust, as he said, is stronger than trust. Envy is stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. So as long as we are feeding into all of these different differences, then we are essentially doing the work of Mr. Lynch. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so I just happened to, on this topic, I found a couple of videos that really spoke to me, and I just wanted to share them with you all. Can you click on it? Will it show if you click on it?
Yeah, I'm gonna try right now and see. Here we go.
Okay. All right. This one really touched my heart.
All right, go. Let me see if I can get it to play.
Why did you clip down to orange?
Ooh, Jesus. Ooh. Ooh. Let me pray first. Let me pray. Let me pray, please. Please.
Brooklyn,
Let me pray.
you better tell me why you clipped down to orange. You wasn't praying when you were showing out. Come on, sit down.
Okay.
No, you sit down, Red, and you're gonna tell me why you clipped down to orange.
Please.
Starting from green, you go down 2 colors to get to orange. What happened?
Jesus. Lord. Jesus, please. I need your help.
Get up.
I need your help, Mama. I need this help. Just help me. Just help me.
You need my help? Help doing what?
To get out of there.
Get out of where?
Kindergarten.
Why?
I don't want to live. Listen, Pastor Claire. I don't want to go to kindergarten.
Why?
I thought it would be no clip down, no be friends to me. It just went all twist up. Just all twist. Hey, can you make this our secret without telling Granny, Niqua, whoever? Just don't tell it.
Brooke, you went to Orange. What did you do?
Mama, listen, can you make this our secret?
What, the whooping that you're about to get?
No.
Well, then that's the only secret we can keep.
Dang, I still started wrong.
Why did you clip
Okay,
down?
you can
orange?
stop. Okay.
You want me to move to the other 2 videos, sis?
Yes, please.
Okay.
2 more.
Okay.
Thank you. This one is at the heart of
Here's something
what
that
I
every
see in
parent
my
should
classroom.
know. If you're not enjoying your experience with your child, it is because your child is mirroring a part of you to yourself, exposing you to a part of yourself that needs your attention. When we bring children onto this side of reality, when they go from thought to form, you're not just creating another human being. You are manifesting yourself in another being. And what that being is or becomes is your greatest mirror. So your child in their perfection is mirroring back to you yourself in their own behavior. And so when you find yourself triggered by their behavior, if you just stop looking at that child as doing something wrong and become inquisitive as to why you are triggered, you will find that what that child is really doing is giving you an opening to yourself, is exposing you to a part of yourself that needs your attention that you would not have been able to see without that child. Your child is a significant part of your journey in being able to see yourself, in being able to discover yourself and address the parts of yourself that need your attention and healing. See, there's a lot of things that happen to us in our childhood that we don't even remember, but the energy of it stays with us, especially when it comes to traumas or things that we were supposed to get that we didn't get from our caretakers and loved ones. Those things sit with us and it doesn't really come out. Even though it's manifested in our decisions and the way that we live our lives, we're not really exposed to it until we come face to face with ourselves in the form of our own children. So if you want to enjoy your child, if you want to be the best parent that you possibly can be, It's not about focusing on how to be the parent necessarily. It's about focusing on how to be your best self. And your child is giving you the opportunity. They're giving you the insight to yourself so that you can do just that. Becoming better in any relationship always comes back to becoming better in the relationship that you have with yourself.
Okay, the last clip.
Mm-hmm.
It's by a very powerful sister. Follow her a lot. She's very good. Okay, you can stop it. Okay, so those 3 videos are present day. And for me, that first video resonated so much with me because I do remember feeling sick. I do remember the bad feeling I had in my stomach and how my heart used to race when I knew that I was in trouble and I was going to get a whooping. And to me, everything that that young lady said was going on with her and everything that she was explaining, she was telling her mother about the trauma. She was explaining to her mother why she was behaving the way she was, because she felt out of place. It wasn't what she expected. But instead of her mom recognizing that and recognizing that about herself, she instead went with what is tried and true in raising African-American children, because we got that teaching from slavery. Because if our parents, whether they came from the South or not, most parents got their training from their own parents, and their own parents got it from what was shown to them by their parents. So it's a generational thing of using fear to get your child to comply rather than actually taking the time to understand the child. The second video is addressing some adults, including myself, with understanding of why we have to do a better job with our children and why we have to break the cycle of the abuse and fear in order to raise our children. And the last video is just basically letting us know just how serious the situation is. When that father is getting on a school bus to threaten another child, and he feels very justified in doing that. And that speaks to the importance of my topic, of why something needs to be done, because on all 3 videos, we are definitely seeing trauma. We're hearing an explanation for trauma, and we're seeing trauma. And this is not trauma from slavery. This is trauma today that's being put upon our youth. Can you change the slide, please? This is the verbiage that our children hear. Thanks. This is what it sounds like. I brought you in this world, I'll take you out. I'll knock you in the next week. Stop all that crying before I give you something to cry about. All of this is happening and being said to an impressionable child. I'll beat you to the white meat shows. If you keep eating like that, you're going to be big as a house. These are just statements that are said. They do not uplift. They do not restore. They only diminish and reduce the child to feeling less than. I am not thinking about you. What are you, slow or something? And of course, the threat of a hard head makes a soft behind. All right, can you go to the next slide, please? Now, when we talk about the trauma and its effect, we see right here adverse childhood experiences influence health and well-being throughout a lifespan. Now, as African Americans, we are all too aware of the generational embodiment of historical trauma. So it should go without saying that that alone should make us aware of our language and what language we use for our children, because we don't even realize its implication and how it's coming out. You got social conditions, you got in the home, adverse childhood experiences disrupt your neural development, social and emotional, and we see this in the classroom. And then we, as an adult, we start seeing the adoption of health risk behaviors. And we also see an increase in disability and social problems and early death. Now I have to take a breath on this and just acknowledge that another reason for my desire to find out or get a better understanding of what's going on is the death of my younger sister. She was 2 years younger than me. She passed a year ago, and she took her own life. She grew up in the exact same household as me, but her ability to be able to deal with her trauma became too much. So I do dedicate this presentation to her, Grace Fazia Muhammad, because if I had not experienced that for myself, I would not realize the severity of the situation. When it hits home, it hits a lot differently, right? My sister Grace had a PhD in psychology. She was a very intelligent person. However, she did suffer from a mental illness, and we never talked about it. I found out later on that she did suffer from bipolar disorder, but it was never talked about because in the African American community, we don't talk about mental illness. Even though she was a psychiatrist, she was too ashamed to even acknowledge it in herself. So we could not be of service to her as our family, as her community, because she felt uncomfortable speaking on it, or felt less than or intimidated with speaking on it. So that's why I'm speaking on it, because it needs to be said. The next picture I have, if you can go back one more. I'm sorry, I wasn't ready for that one yet, but I wanted to talk about this percentage of children with 2 or more ACEs. ACEs, I'm going to explain in the next slide, are adverse childhood experiences, and I will go into those. But I just want you all to take a look at the number of children with 2 or more ACEs in the United States. As you can see, African Americans are leading in that percentage. Across the United States, we account for 33%. African American children, or children in general, account for 33. African American children account for 33% of the children with 2 or more ACEs. Just keep that in mind as we continue to go forward, but just understand this is why our area right here, East, North, Central, you see a 38% with 2 or more. So that's the population that I'm speaking about. Okay, can you change the slide? Okay, so this is the definition. What does your ACE score mean? As your adverse childhood experience score increases, the risk of health problems and social and emotional problems increases. Think about your score as a tally of different types of toxic stress you endured as a child, and an alert to some statistical indicators of health risk. The ACE study shows that ACE score increases, so does your risk of suffering from mental health and medical problems like chronic depression, cancer, coronary heart disease, which are the effects of childhood trauma. The chart shows, well, I didn't show you the chart, but the score of 4 or more. For this, the likelihood of chronic pulmonary lung disease increases, hepatitis increases, depression increases, and attempted suicide increases. Can you change slides? I also would like to make a point that while my mother was physically healthy, she was afflicted with breast cancer. So that over the years, I've been trying to figure out the why behind the deaths, if they were happening early on. And I look at that particular slide and see the correlation between cancer and depression and mental illness, and understand that her childhood experience, she carried it with her. She carried it with her, and it just continued on with that experience being carried with her throughout her life. And this is how depression is within our DNA. And it's what makes up, it's a part of us, and we have to recognize it. It's not a weakness. It's just part of our DNA. So from the book, The Body Keeps the Score, here's the quote: "Long after a traumatic experience is over, it may be reactivated at the slightest hint of danger and mobilize disturbed brain circuits and secrete massive amounts of stress hormone. This precipitates unpleasant emotions, intense physical sensations, and impulsive and aggressive actions. This post-traumatic reaction feels incomprehensible and overwhelming, feeling out of control. Survivors of trauma often begin to fear that they are damaged to the core and beyond redemption." We see this extensively at the high school level. Now, if you could click on that video, a YouTube video, this will give you a better idea, a better understanding of the science of childhood trauma.
The emotional effects of childhood trauma are well known, but new scientific research reveals that child's positive and negative experiences can shape and reshape the brain. Research suggests that the more a child witnesses violence, the more neural connections are created in regions of the brain that involve fear, anxiety, and impulsiveness, while fewer are created in regions that involve reasoning, planning, and behavioral control. The good news is the young brain is malleable or plastic, and fostering stable, supportive relationships can prevent or help reverse this damage, resulting in lifelong benefits for the child's learning, behavior, and overall health. So how can you help a child in your life? Just remember these 5 healing gestures. Celebrate them with a compliment or by applauding their efforts. Comfort them by staying calm and patient. Listen to them and show an interest in their passions. Collaborate with them by asking their opinions, and inspire them with new ideas. With these everyday gestures, you can help a child look forward to a bright future.
If you go to the next slide. So as we can see, if a child, and a lot of times I did the research for within my school district, the areas, the students that live in Cal Park and Robbins, and the rate of criminal activity or violence is like 3 to 5 times higher than the national. So we're talking about 34% and 24% when I did the research. So when we understanding that children are coming up in households, and some of us even in our own childhood, with having an incarcerated family member, physical or emotional neglect, bullying, domestic violence, maternal depression, emotional and sexual abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse, parental mental illness, homelessness, or divorce. Just that in the household is one, but then when you take into account especially for my parents, it's completely understandable of why the trauma lived in our home. When you think about the substandard schools, when you think about the structural racism, the historical trauma, the substandard wages, food scarcity, lack of social and emotional mobility. So when you have all of those things already within the first 2 realms, and for me, what I'm noticing is that 3rd realm, as far as the environment, We don't live in a tornado area. We don't live near flash floods. But the one thing that we all have had to witness, and we have to recognize that has had an effect on us, is that pandemic that we experienced. And so you have all three of these things, all these realms of adverse childhood experiences. It is not surprising that the school system, the way the education system as it is right now, the way that it's addressing the trauma of these students is to get rid of them or suspend them. And with that suspension, all we're doing is sending them right back to the first two realms where all of the trauma is happening. So in fact, we are doing more harm. The school system is doing more harm than good, and punishing the child for circumstances that they had no control of. They have no control over what's going on in their household, what they hear, and what was said to them. They have no control over the address in which they reside, because they don't have a choice, but yet they're penalized because of these situations. And if we don't recognize them, then we're only making the situation. We're not solving it. We're just identifying it over and over again, but we're not fixing it. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so on September 23rd of this year, I experienced a month or so before my 50th birthday, my first post-traumatic episode. But I thought I was prepared. As I mentioned, it's defined as a traumatic event that can have negative lasting effects on the health and well-being. Because of the environment that I was working in, I was very easily triggered. Although I thought I was preparing myself because I knew of my sister's passing, and I was making sure that I was being cognizant of how I was responding to stress and taking measures to make sure that my stress was managed well by exercising, by praying, by trying to get involved in my school more. However, it wasn't to be. I still suffered traumatic episode, and it did last, and for over 12 days. So this message is not just for the community, but it's also part of my healing process by even recognizing it and acknowledging it and sharing what its effects have had on me. It's toxic stress that I received, or that I've grew up in, as well as my work environment, made it very difficult for my resilience to be able to, for me to be able to respond appropriately. I experienced reduced my ability to respond to a stressful event with resilience. I had to step away from my classroom and my teaching career in order to address it. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, this is why it's been very hard to explain this to other Muslims. There tends to be a taboo in our Muslim community around seeking help from professionals in the field of psychology and psychiatry. We often hear comments that deny the existence of depression and other mental health ailments. She should pray more. He should fast more. It's in your head. This person is possessed. Depression, anxiety, and other mental health disorders are real diseases that require medical attention and sometimes medical treatment. People showing signs of these disorders should be advised to seek expert help rather than be told their issue is not real or that the solution is simple. This was my experience in my home, that depression, that's how depression was seen, as something that you just need to get closer to God. And for that reason, I was the most upset by my episodes, because they have come in the past right after I thought I was protecting myself by fasting, by saying my prayers, by being amongst Muslims and staying active in the community and exercising. I thought I was really doing everything that I had control over to be able to manage the feelings, the dark feelings that I had. And because we don't talk about it in our community, I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. So if you go to the next slide. As ACE studies has shown, and because I wish for my brother what I wish for myself, as ACE studies have shown, child abuse and neglect is the single most preventable cause of mental illness, the single most common cause of drug and alcohol abuse, and a significant contributor to leading causes of death, such as diabetes, heart disease, cancer, stroke, and suicide. So my experience has impressed upon me the importance of providing a resource, particularly for parents in our association and the broader community. This program would implement a restorative format, providing a framework for effective parenting with social emotional learning focused. If you can go to the next slide. So as an educator, one of the things that I tried to impress upon my school that I work at, because I really wanted to become a restorative facilitator at my school, but it wasn't to be. But one of the things that also motivates me to want to still continue to present or try to be of service is the fact that in order for our students to, they have to Maslow before they bloom. So basically, if their home life, if they don't have a place to stay, a steady place to stay, security, stability, feeling of belonging in the community, in the school, and confidence and recognition of achievements and respect, that's what leads to self-actualization. But without those components in place, it is very difficult for our students to bloom, for us to be able to get them to know, to get them to comprehend and apply and analyze and synthesize and evaluate. Most of our students my students that I see are struggling with just being able to know and comprehend because they're so bombarded with other factors that are going on in their life. So I want to be able to say that I did something to be able to help future generations Maslow so they can bloom. You can go to the next slide, please. I want to be able to say that with the efforts that I made, I was able to, you can't quite see the top part of this slide. Can you see it, brother?
I cannot, no, it's cut off. You want me to, I can go and escape the full screen and maybe we can see it if we.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, preventing ACEs in future generations could reduce levels. So if I could be able to reduce the level of low mental well-being by 27%, not feeling optimistic about the future by 43%, not feeling useful by 48%, not feeling relaxed. I see a lot of this in my classroom amongst my students. Dealing with problems well by 31%, not thinking clearly by 34%, not feeling close to other people by 25%, and not being able to make their minds up by about 26%. If I, along with the community, can work with parents to help make this kind of a difference in their lives, then I believe that that would be my greatest contribution to this community, to give back and to be able to help where it's clearly needed. I believe I got one more slide, I believe. So on the site I went to, they mentioned 12 other mental health tips from the Quran, and that they are to acknowledge the reality and the importance of mental health. Turn to Allah. But I'm sorry, I'm not able to pronounce it. As SWT, and remember, He is with you. Take care of your body, take care of your spirituality, seek expert help when you need it, Make the Quran an integral part of your life. Practice mindfulness. Show patience and put your trust in Allah. Sawat ta'ala. Check your consumption of media. Yes, that includes social media. Favor the presence of positive people to give and to think as a community. So with that, that concludes my presentation. If there are any questions or comments, I'm open to hearing them now.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wow.
Bashir Assad. That was a very excellent presentation and a blessing to us and a blessing to you. I'm elated in hearing what you had to say, and thankful to the Talim committee too. You need to save this one. Put it there and so it can be played again. There's only 18 people on this line, but this one was great.
Thank you.
Assalamu
Walaikum assalam. Thank you very much. All praise to Allah.
Yeah, other comments or questions, and if you don't feel compelled to take yourself off mute, then feel free to put your questions and comments in the chat. I echo what Brother Bashir just said. There's so much richness in this presentation. I'm going to ask you a question, Sister Rasheedah. If you could talk to us a little bit about what you're seeing as a classroom teacher. You alluded to some of the things you're noticing, but I want you to speak more specifically about what you're seeing as a result of the combination of these adverse childhood experiences intersecting with this pandemic. Well, how did that show up in your classroom, and what were some things that you did to address it?
Well, one of the things that I did was actually speak to social emotional learning. So I spoke at the beginning of the school year about self-awareness and about social awareness, about self-management and about social management, social skills. However, it was not well received because unfortunately, a lot of our students have really become conditioned to not connecting with the teacher. It's as if a wall was already put up against the teacher, because teachers get on their nerves and they don't understand the importance of it. The wall became thicker with the pandemic because it made it that much easier for them to keep a certain amount of distance. And it's unfortunate, but our students of color seem to be almost on edge and ready to pounce when you're trying to offer help. Case in point, I have an example of a student. I'm noticing her behavior last year, I have her this year. I'm calling home and I'm explaining to mom, I see some difference in her behavior. She wasn't behaving like this before. She seems kind of agitated and like she just very divisive and doesn't want to look at me when I'm talking to her and doesn't want to pay it, it's as if I'm bothering her. And it's unfortunate that instead of the mom, I was like, is there anything I could do to help? Is there anything that, may be causing this? The unfortunate thing was that the mom accused me of being the problem. She said none of her other students, none of her other teachers said anything, so it must be me. So that's the frustrating part, is because I don't have parents understanding what this looks like, and they're befriending, their friendship with their child is more important than getting on the same page as the educator. I have to now defend my conversation or my dealings with her, because they only came from concern because I see the irritability and I'm seeing for no reason how you're irritable with me in second period and I haven't done anything. But it's a sign that something is not right. But unfortunately, our parents are not ready to even discuss it or even bring it up. It's easier for them to blame the teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think some of that is a result of, fear, parents not knowing what to do, right? So you receive a call from the teacher expressing some concerns, and sometimes that reticence to even engage in a conversation is, I really don't know what to do. I'm struggling with my own mental health issues, right? How do I then address that? We have a comment and a question from Dr. Aisha, who says, excellent presentation. She gives you her thanks. But she's looking for you to offer some suggestions on what we can do as a community to better support mental health. What can we do as a community to support mental health?
I think the first thing we have to do is actually acknowledge that it exists, and acknowledge and not treat the word depression or bipolar as if they are taboo words, because it's still a challenge for me, but I said I could say it today. I am living with major depressive disorder. Being able to say that amongst, and I'm not less of a Muslim because of it. I'm a practicing Muslim, but being able to take the labels off and really being able to support one another. I would love a support group. I would love somebody who could be able to, and I have no problem offering my services, but I know I'm not a mental health expert, but I can at least be a person that says, or offer the group that I wanted to start, the support group that I want to start for our parents. I want to do that. I was expressing to Imam Tariq that I would love to do an 8 to 6 week group on just dealing with parenting skills, because that is the one area that as African Americans we have never gotten on a same page with, as far as for our children's success, is reading from the same book that does not add more harm but actually helps future generations, because you don't even realize that you may be becoming your parent but not the best part of your parent. So having even topics of conversations more on during Talim where we do invite parents, and we do sit here and have like an open panel where they can talk about what are some of the things that you're seeing. What are your gripes with the school system? What are your gripes with, but is there anything, what are you struggling with as a parent? Because that's the one thing I'm calling to tell you about your kid, but at the same time, I would love to be able to talk to you about what are your challenges? What are you facing? How can I help you?
Yes.
I really want to be able to start a support group for the parents in this community and abroad. And I really would like for us to be able to make this a topic that we do engage in at least twice a year.
Yeah.
Especially at the beginning of the school year, like we had our conversation about the school year, just letting parents know you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because that's a lonely feeling.
Yeah, one of the things that we have done a great job of in our community is normalizing trauma. And I don't mean the Muslim community specifically, I mean the African American community broadly. And I think there's a gift and a curse associated with that, right? The gift is that we are able to push through and fight through and overcome. The curse is at what cost?
Yes.
At what cost? Right?
Especially when we're talking about the mother.
Yes.
Mother is the one that carries the baby. And that trauma, I express to my older siblings when they tell me that I had it easier than they did, right? Said, well, you had the nicer version of our parents because they were tired. But at the same time, I explained to them that the trauma that I experienced wasn't necessarily outside, it was inside while I was in the womb, because that trauma that my mother experienced, where did it go? Where could it go?
Yeah.
But to the children that she bore.
That's
right. So
right.
I'm explaining to them, while you saw some things, I felt them.
Yes.
Its implications at her age, it didn't have any place to go. So where else did it go but in her children?
That's right. No, that's a great point. Our dear sister Hakima says she thanks you for being so open and so vulnerable, and for sharing, your stories as it relates to mental health. She also is in support of this support group for parents. Look, we all need it. right? We all need, I definitely find myself sometimes needing just to talk to somebody, right?
Yes.
You're dealing with
Yes.
the stresses and you know, the ups and downs. I mean, there's so much beauty in being a parent, but there's also those moments where you question whether or not you're doing a good job or have made the right decisions. And it's nice to be able to bounce ideas off of people who understand what the journey is like. I'm going to ask that Brother Bill take himself off mute and go ahead and make his comment.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Rasheedah.
Yeah.
My comment is I want to back definitely what Brother Bashir's comments were earlier. Very, very impressed with your whole presentation and the amount of detail and how you kind of went through not only the detail about these traumas and how they happen, but also kind of, you know, the history of where they came from. The main comment I wanted to make, though, is that I forget who just asked that, you know, how do we make it okay to get mental health services for ourselves or our family or whatever. I think your role and your model of just doing that on this presentation was, for me, very impressive, that you just put yourself out there, willing to be vulnerable, you know, what your family went through, what you went through. I'm obviously from a little bit different background, that going, you know, I see a therapist and, you know, I have depression problems and take medication for it. But I'm from a background that more encourages that, at least somewhat more. So I just really, alhamdulillah, just the you're being out, putting yourself out there, I just thought was just really one of the best things you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Thank you for your comment, Brother Bill. We have Zahira Shaheed, who says she agrees that parenting skills development can prevent ACE. And we also have from Z Shaheed that ACE is a real trial, particularly with Black communities. And just thanking you for providing that simple context for us and making it understandable to us, and offering appreciation for your presentation and for sharing your struggles. I echo that. I mean, I think, you know, all of us are just so fortunate for you for being willing to be vulnerable. I'm going to ask that our brother Imam Tariq take himself off mute and go ahead and ask his question. And then Brother Clyde is going to close us out with the final question of today's Talim. Imam Tariq.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, beloved.
Okay, I hope that I'm coming through clearly. Sister Rasheedah, I don't want to overuse you know, the term vulnerability because sometimes it takes away from the strength of that act. And I think that first of all, I appreciate your presentation, you know, immensely, and I appreciate you demonstrating the strength of vulnerability, you know, because in doing so, it allows people, it allows for number one, for yourself, but it also allows for the listeners to see themselves in that. And it brings us, I think it brings us closer together. And I also want to mention, because you made the reference, obviously there is a great amount of need for this, for the conversation, particularly around parenting, the healing that comes about through community. So obviously, you know, you got a mandate. So I'm looking forward to the next step, and you putting together that 6 to 8 week, you know, initial schedule, however you choose to, you know, put that together. Because I definitely think that's going to be a benefit. And the last thing that I want to mention is that one of the other things I feel is really valuable in this is that it didn't just give us answers, but I think it's given us a lot of questions that we have to grapple with that are going to allow us to really change the culture, you know, around not just parenting culture, support, mental, you know, recognition of mental illness, but it's so wonderful question, wonderful food for thought that is going to stay with us as we move forward. So thank you so much again.
Walaikum assalam. All praise to Allah.
Yeah, I hate to, hopefully no one takes offense with me injecting a little bit of levity into this conversation, but what Imam Tariq there, what he just did was what I like to call the taking advantage of the cost of competence. Once you do show you are competent to do something, there's a cost associated with it. And in this case, Sister Rasheedah, the cost is you developing this 6 to 8 week program to support.
I'm excited about it. I'm
families.
excited
Yes.
about it.
Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Absolutely. Thank you, Imam Tariq. I'm going to ask that Brother Clyde close us out.
Yeah, this will be very quick. And I'm sorry that I raised my hand so late, but I was driving, but I had to pull over. Well, first of all, sister, I want to thank you. And this is just because it's a fact, but also I think, you know, to give you a certain kind of confidence too. When I was working with Imam Warthi Muhammad early on in his leadership with the schools and really with the community, he was very, 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 very open about the fact that this was something in our community that needed attention. And he was actually looking for professionals in our community to help him out in that regard. It was one of the reasons, but not the only reasons, that he brought Naeem Akbar to Chicago. He was a clinical psychologist, a professor in clinical psychology, and it was really one of the leading thinkers in terms of taking a new perspective, another perspective in terms of African Americans and mental health. So he would be very much in line with you and what you're talking about and what you're saying needs to be done. And he inspired me, in fact, to push it a little bit harder in the city colleges. That's why one of the things we kicked off before I left was the wellness centers that actually has a very, very healthy concentration on mental health and wellness.
All praise to Allah.
Sister Rasheedah, as we get ready to close out, is there anything else you would like to offer, that other words of wisdom or pearls or nuggets that you can share with the believers that's on the call as we close out today's Talim?
I just want to thank you all for receiving this in the manner of which it was intended. I thank Allah for putting this on my heart and for allowing me the courage to say it and understand that I love my parents dearly. I am so grateful for their contributions. But if we are to evolve as a community, we do have to recognize where we are failing our youth and actually make efforts to address and so that the next generation doesn't necessarily have to struggle as hard with such a tragedy, because trauma it does not have to be part of our storyline. It does not.
Yes, absolutely. I think this topic deserves a part 2, 3, or 4. I think, you know, you did a wonderful job, sister, of talking about the role that fear plays and how we raise our children. And you and I had a conversation briefly at Juma, talking about how we've allowed fear and white supremacy to weave its way into the way in which we parent our children.
Yes.
Because that's how we ourselves were parented. Yes. And this notion of the passing down of generational trauma is something that we hear a lot about in sort of the superficial rhetoric, but we still have not done the real work of going underneath the hood and getting to the core of that. And you did I think Ma'am Tariq's comments were right on. Like you gave us some answers, but you also left us with a bunch of questions and a bunch of uncomfortable pushes to start to think about and do something about. So may Allah continue to bless you, through some of your trials and tribulations. May He give you ease. May He bless all of us. May He count us amongst those who are most grateful and most thankful for His abundant blessings. I'm thankful to this community. I'm thankful for all of you for joining us today. And we're going to close out now with Walasa. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Walasa. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati. Wa tawassa bil haqq wa tawassa bis sabr. Ameen.